Hey, you guys, it finally happened. Someone from an episode that I did about them reached out, and shocker, they were not happy with how I portrayed them. First, thank you to everyone who sends in messages. I do see them. If you text me through the podcast app, I cannot respond to them directly because I don't know privacy and the way that that is all set up. However, if you do contact me through the website, johnhensonwrites.com, I can definitely respond that way. So, something fun happened. Back on episode 281, I profiled the Aggressive Christianity Missionary Training Corps as part of the Summer of Cults. Now, as a refresher, they're a cult modeled after the Salvation Army's philosophy of aggressive Christianity, except they completely misinterpreted it. They also may or may not have stolen an African child. They definitely abused members. They definitely refused them medical care. Dr. Phil got involved. They turned into these, MAGA QAnon dinglings. Anyway, it was a whole thing. And you should go back and listen to that episode because they're a fun group. So imagine my complete glee and elation when I got a message from one John Green, member of the ACMTC. Now, I don't know how John Green, it's one of those cults where everyone takes the same name. And so everyone in that cult, as far as I can tell, their last name is Green. So I don't know where they're related in all of this. But John Green from the Aggressive Christianity Missionary Training Corps. It's a tongue twister of a name. Anyway, he sent me a message, and I will share it now with you. Why the music? Right? That producer's being a little silly, but it's fine. Anyway, hello. My name is John Green. I am one of the members of Aggressive Christianity Missions Training Corps. I just listened to your broadcast about the group. Sadly to say, you have a lot of your facts off. I don't know where you're getting your info, but a lot of it is factually incorrect. If you want to know the facts, go to aggressivechristianity.net. There are facts in the PX2 files. We can with proof back all of it up. But the main thing is, John Henson, he spelled my name wrong, by the way. You sound like you have strayed from God in your own life. Saying you were raised around evangelical Christians, you probably know about salvation or were probably saved at one time. You might want to think about getting your life right with God because eternity is a long time to be punished for your sins and or backslidings. Sincerely, John Green. Now, I am not in the business of telling people they're wrong or telling people how to live their lives, right? I understand human psychology, and you trying to do that, especially to an adult, is only going to make them double down harder. So I'm not going to do that. However, I am going to defend myself from unfrosted Pop-Tarts like John Green, who don't really seem to understand how the real world works. And if you're going to come at me and accuse me of saying that I did some things wrong, I'm going to defend myself. So now, I don't really have the time or the crayons to fully explain all of this to you, John Green, in all of the detail it deserves. But I will give you more effort than your message gave me. All right. First, you said that I have a lot of my facts off. Did he say which facts were off? Of course not. He just got his Weedle feet was hurt and therefore said that I was suddenly factually incorrect. That's not true. All right. Everything that I shared in that episode was sourced from one of over 30 different legitimate news outlets, as well as the Aggressive Christianity's own website. This includes everything from Deborah and Jim Green's beginnings as drug addicts who then got, channeled that, addiction into religion. And it goes all the way through their cult history up to their unhinged MAGA support. Here are some of the major bullet points with clear sources for you, just in case, you were doubting it. In 1989, Mara Schmeirer won a $1 million judgment against the cult for false imprisonment and abuse. This was covered extensively by the Southern Poverty Law Center. In 2017, New Mexico authorities raided their New Mexico compound. Deborah Green was arrested mid-sermon. CBS News has multiple articles on this. In 2018, Deborah Green was convicted of child abuse, kidnapping, and sexual abuse of minors and sentenced to 72 years in prison. Jim Green took a 10-year plea deal. KRQE News out of Albuquerque, which I'm sure John Green is very familiar with, they covered all of that story. Survivors of the cult, including Deborah's own daughter, Sarah, have testified consistently about the physical, emotional, and spiritual abuse inside the cult. These facts and quotes come from documented court records and sworn testimony. The only thing in this episode that was not sourced and, is up for debate is whether or not you guys stole that African baby. And I made it clear in the episode that I wasn't really sure, but it seems like they probably did, right? The next thing that John points out, he tells me to go to their website for the facts. And I did. I did go to the Aggressive Christianity website on multiple occasions to get source material. And also I went back just to verify after this message. By the way, this website is an absolute user experience nightmare and cannot possibly be a good recruitment tool, but whatever. Also, the PX2 files that he references, they are not facts, right? They are propaganda. And I understand that John Green does not see the difference there. Facts are externally verifiable and consistent across multiple respected sources. The material on the Aggressive Christianity website is self-serving to glorify their schizophrenic leaders, control the perception of the cult internally, and to keep followers loyal and probably pretty confused. Courts do not accept self-published cult tracts as evidence of the truth. The PX2 files only serve to show how insane you all are, right? Here's the difference. I'll explain it to you at the most elementary level I can possibly do, right? If I say that it's going to rain tomorrow, anyone can go and check a weather forecast and verify it the next day when it does in fact rain, right? If you guys say that it's going to rain because Deborah got a vision from God and prophesied it, that's propaganda, right? That only works. Even if it does rain the next day, that only works if people already just believe you and don't go outside and understand how science works, right? The last thing, he says I've strayed from God, which is a cute little manipulation tactic, right? Him trying to shame me into silence instead of addressing the abuse, that the group has inflicted, or even, point out specific facts that I allegedly got wrong. That's a classic cult move. It's the same playbook that Deborah and Jim have used on, smooth-brained mouth breathers like John for decades. They deflect, they condemn, they control. So here's the bottom line, Johnny boy. Deborah Green is a convicted felon. Jim Green took a plea deal. Survivors have gone public. I cannot wait for the book to come out in April of 2026 that will expose you guys even more. No amount of rambling or Google alerts that you have set up to go after people who talk about your group is going to change that reality. So I hope your day is as pleasant as you are. Let's get into this week's episode. Welcome to Our Weird World. I'm your host, John Henson, and it is week 3 of Serial Killer September, and it is the 10th edition of our Serial Killer Sampler series, and we are looking at the lives of Peter Lundin, Samuel Little, and our first story will be of John Christie. Story time! Story time! Story time?
John Christie was born on April 8th, 1899 in Yorkshire, England, to the sort of dysfunctional family that creates stories like this. We covered it last week, and, get some more of it here. On one hand, Christie's father was cold, harsh, and abusive, and on the other hand, he was coddled by his mother and older sisters. Now, last week I talked about abusive alcoholics, all right? The other sort of semi-pattern to this is that serial killers did not have, even if they weren't alcoholics, they were still abusive and just terrible fathers. And so I feel like, in a weird, twisted sort of way, this is helping me be a better father for my kids. It's I'm not sitting there when they're crying and throwing tantrums and all of that. I'm not sitting there actively thinking well, I should probably be nice so they don't turn into serial killers. But it's definitely just kind of living there in the back of my mind somewhere and guiding kind of how I respond to things. So I don't know. Maybe there's something to that. Here's the thing. Parents, be good parents. All right. If you're terrible parents, your kids likely end up as serial killers. So despite this conflicting family dynamic for Christie, right, where his dad's abusive, but then his mom just coddles him, mom and his sisters coddle him and, give him all of the love and affection, right? He was still a good kid. He was an excellent math student. He sang in the church choir. He participated in the Boy Scouts, and he registered an IQ of 128. I think that's pretty good. Unfortunately, he grew up to experience a lot of girl problems that ultimately earned him the nicknames Reggie No Dick and Can't Do It Christie. That's so crazy. I'm again, it's Reggie No Dick, Can't Do It Christie. And I mean, I'm these are probably high school. Obviously, he's spoiler alert. He's about to enter the military. And you know how military dudes are, just God, and then he's Christie's over here can't get a boner, and so then they know about it. How do they know about it? Maybe because all the girls then went to other soldiers to, I don't know. Anyway, so he's got girl problems, all right. And in 1916, Christie enlisted in the British Army and served as an infantryman in France during World War I. In June of 1918, Christie was injured in a mustard gas attack and spent a month recovering in a hospital in Calais. He claimed that this attack left him without the ability to speak loudly, okay, and that it had caused him to lose his sight and voice for more than 3 years. Various doctors disputed these claims, as Christie would never have been discharged from the hospital had he actually been mute or, suffering, severe effects like this. And Christie's claims about being unable to speak loudly was almost certainly a psychological reaction rather than any sort of literal effect from the gas. And so, none of these, and also, here's the thing, none of these side effects or whatever, and how long he said he had them actually line up with the timeline of his life. And you'll see. So he says that he couldn't speak loudly and lost his sight and his voice for more than 3 years. So I would assume him saying he lost his voice and him not being able to speak loudly are just kind of two ways of saying the same thing. But then he said he lost his sight for more than 3 years. And yet this happened in June of 1918. Less than 2 years later, on May 10th, 1920, he married Ethel Simpson. So and it's not like he just walked out of the hospital, met this girl, and got married, right? So he would have had to have known Ethel probably for a few months at the minimum. And so what's he doing? He gets discharged from the hospital and he's just kind of aimlessly wandering around British streets wherever he is. And just hello, my name is John Christie. I suffered a mustard gas attack, and this is as loud as I can talk because of the effects of the mustard gas. And I'm sorry, I can't really see right now. It's also part of the mustard. No, get out of here. No, that's not this dude. And granted, right? Going into World War I, going into the trenches, that's psychologically damaging. Totally get it. And then you add to the fact that A, he's incredibly intelligent. So intelligent people know how to manipulate things. And then 2, he has this weird hot and cold upbringing where, his dad's abusive. So like all of these things have really like jumbled his brain. All right. But he gets married, somehow having regained enough of an ability to see and talk to women. And he married Ethel Simpson in 1920. However, his impotence continued to be an issue. And he only found sexual success while visiting with prostitutes that he obviously never told Ethel about. And then on top of that, he also began committing various crimes with those prostitutes, like assault, stealing money orders, and, spent several months in prison for each of these offenses. Well, when World War II began, so like he basically serves in World War I, gets married, and then just becomes a petty criminal after that. When World War II began, he joined the War Reserve Police, which wouldn't have happened at all if literally just one person had checked to see if he had a criminal record. Or maybe they did, and they're desperate at this point, and they're just going to let anybody become the police. While working as a police officer, because, probably all of the regular police officers got drafted to go fight in World War II, Christie met Gladys Jones and began having an affair with her. Their relationship lasted until 1943 when Jones's husband returned from war, found the two together, and then proceeded to beat Christie senselessly. Of course he did. On August 24th, 1943, Christie invited Ruth First, a 21-year-old prostitute, over to his house while his wife was away visiting family. Christie, according to him, impulsively decided to strangle First with a rope and then stuff her body beneath the floorboards of the living room before then burying her in the backyard the next evening. Christie, after that, soon resigned from the police force and instead got a job at the Acton radio factory, where he then met Muriel Eady. Side note, why do all of Christie's love interests have like super stereotypical old lady names, right? His first wife, Ethel, right? Then the 21-year-old prostitute that he brought over and murdered, named Ruth. And then goes and gets a new job at the Acton radio factory and meets Muriel. What are we doing in Britain in the 1940s? All of that makes sense, actually. I don't know why I'm upset about it. Anyway. On October 7th, 1944, Christie invited Muriel Eady over to his house to give her a special concoction to cure her bronchitis, i.e. his wiener. Once Eady was seated and comfortable, Christie handed her a jar of Friar's Balsam, which is basically like this mix of chemicals that was originally designed to mask the smell of gas. And so as she inhaled it, Christie attached a tube to the jar and pumped in domestic gas, which contained 15% carbon monoxide. Well, that was enough to knock Eady out, and when she was unconscious, he raped and strangled her before burying her with First's body in the backyard, Ruth First. On Easter Sunday, 1948, Christie's neighbor Timothy Evans informed police that his wife and both of his infant children were dead and that their bodies had been found in an outdoor wash house. Now, Timothy Evans confessed that John Christie had killed his wife during a botched abortion, but further questioning by police actually basically coerced this dude into giving a different confession that he had actually committed the murder, which he later tried to retract, but they basically went with this coerced confession. Anyway, Evans was put on trial, and then, thanks to Christie's testimony against him, was found guilty of murdering his family and hanged on March 9th, 1950, even though Christie had definitely killed all three people. Why? Well, in this coerced confession, Timothy Evans claimed that the bodies were either in a drain or a manhole, but nothing was ever found. Even more, police found a whole human femur propped against the fence in the garden where the Evans bodies were found and thought nothing of it. And because Christie, and here's the reason why, because Christie was a former police officer, police treated him very respectfully and believed everything he told them. Because, guys, police obviously can't commit murder. And police are going to look out for their own whenever someone, accuses them of something, right? So Christie definitely murders this dude's family, and then because he's a police officer, the investigating police take his side and then force the dude who just lost his entire family to, confess. Which, granted, right? Like, I gotta believe that Timothy Evans had to have asked John Christie to murder his family. There's no way that this dude, granted, right? Like, Evan's initial confession was that Christie killed his wife during a botched abortion, which, why are you going to your neighbor to perform an abortion on your wife? That's weird. All right. Mr. Christie, I know you're a former police officer. Will you come stick a hanger up my wife's hole and get that baby out? We don't want it. Whoa. Okay. But and then Christie obviously has no idea what he's doing, but he gets to go kill something, so he's on board with it. Gets up in there, realizes, I've done way too much. I guess everybody's got to die now. Somehow goes and kills another infant baby that they had in their house, and then kills the woman. Maybe killed the woman during the botched abortion. Maybe got a 2-for-1 there. And then, whatever. But the police actually got this dude to confess that, no, it wasn't Christie who killed me family, it was me. And then the police were like, yeah, all right, that's all we need. And then Evan's like, oh, no, I'm just kidding. It wasn't really me. It was, I don't know where the accent's going. Anyway, so in 1950 now, moving forward, a black immigrant family from the Caribbean moved into the vacant rooms that the Evans family once lived in. Now, Christie and Ethel, remember Ethel? Yeah, they're still married. Despite him banging all these prostitutes and murdering all these women, they're still married. Ethel, oblivious wife. They were horrified by the new neighbors because, of course, Christie was going to also be super racist. He was a cop. Of course he was. Hey. Anyway, you get it. Ethel eventually had one of the family members arrested and prosecuted on trumped-up assault charges. Unfortunately, though, Christie and Ethel's shared hatred of black people wasn't enough to save their marriage, and Christie finally strangled her in their bed 2 years later in 1952. God, dude, they were married, 32 years, I think? Let's see, they got married in 1920, and it took until 1952 for him to murder her. There must have been something redeeming about her, right? For him to wait 32 years to finally kill her. Christie, when word got out that his wife had died, he quickly made up several stories to explain why no one had actually seen her. He also forged her signature to empty her bank account and sold off all of her possessions. Christie then killed 3 more women over the next 3 months by gassing, raping, and strangling them before then stowing their bodies in a recess in his kitchen wall that he later covered with wallpaper. And that's a questionable move. All right. I don't know if you've dealt with wallpaper. It's not like drywall, it's a little thin. It's pretty malleable. So you're just going to have this breakfast nook in your kitchen, basically, or a little recessed area in your kitchen. And then you're just going to stuff a bunch of dead bodies in it, or at least one, 3. Yeah. He stuffs at least 3 dead bodies in there. And then he's just going to wallpaper that recess as if the dead body's pushing up. And, maybe they weren't, but I don't know. Also, the smell's going to come through. It's not like wallpaper is just going to block that smell. It was weird. Then Christie inexplicably decided to sublet his apartment to another couple, but his landlord quickly forced them out. And then with this apartment now abandoned, the landlord allowed another tenant, Beresford Brown. What a name, Beresford. Where are we getting some Beresfords these days? That is a blast from the past. I had never heard that name before this story. Beresford Brown. What a British name. Anyway, I'm getting hung up on names. So Christie's apartment's now abandoned. He tried to sublet it to some other people. Landlord didn't like it. So the apartment's abandoned. He lets one of the other tenants kind of just use the kitchen as she needed. I assume Beresford is a woman, as needed. Well, On March 24th, 1953, Beresford Brown decided to do some remodeling and attempted to insert some brackets into the wall to hold a radio receiver. However, what she thought was a wall was actually this wallpapered area that, had 3 dead bodies inside. And so she was freaked out about it. Christie was arrested a week later and admitted to everything. Despite pleading insanity, Christie was found guilty of murdering his wife and was hanged on July 15th. As Christie was lifted on the gallows, he complained that his nose was itchy, which, why? It's like, Mr. Christie, do you have any last words? Why is he Australian? I don't know. And my nose is itchy. Well, it won't bother you for long, which is a direct quote from the executioner just before pulling the final rope. Following Christie's death, it was speculated that he was responsible for murdering more than 8 women that he had been accused of because Christie had collected, this is creepy, he had collected absurdly large mounds of pubic hair from his victims, including his wife. Why? Why is that the thing you take? However, police weren't able to match the 3 other sets of pubic hair to any of his other victims. They're just going through his belongings, just find like a shoebox full of pubes. It's just, ew. Even more, Christie's conviction and confession sparked a ton of outrage regarding the Timothy Evans case. Remember the one that, police coerced their own confession out of, right? Multiple inquiries were conducted into the investigation, which found all of the uncertainty around the case should have surely resulted in a not guilty verdict against Evans. In July of 2003, the Home Office, which is basically like England's version of immigration and security, they awarded Evans' sister and half-sister ex gratia payments as compensation for the quote-unquote miscarriage of justice in the trial. Moving on, Samuel Little was born on June 7th, 1940 in a prison in Reynolds, Georgia to a teenage prostitute. So should have just stayed there. If hindsight was an actual ability, we could have just kept him there, but we didn't. Unsurprisingly, after being born to a teenage prostitute, he was raised by his grandmother in Ohio, but bounced around several cities and states throughout his childhood. When he saw his kindergarten teacher randomly just touch her own neck one day, he began having fantasies about strangling women. That's crazy. Just as a kindergartner. Here's the thing, all right? And this is what really concerns me, all right? Finn, at least as I record this, I don't know if he's still doing it. I hope not. But as I record this, he's going through a phase right now where, he really enjoys being tickled, but he specifically enjoys his neck being tickled. And so what he'll do is when he's feeling playful, he will grab my hand and just right against his throat. Just get in there, Dad. And it's unnerving knowing what I know about the world. But it's just like this little baby just like, yeah, Dad, choke me out. And it's just like, no, buddy, how about we tickle your belly or something? And so this is what's really concerning is kindergartner Samuel Little sees his kindergarten teacher, I don't know, maybe just rubbing her neck, I don't know, just trying to relax or something. And he sees her do this. And then all of a sudden he's just like, I want to strangle women forever. And then that's what he does. In high school, he was arrested for breaking and entering in Omaha, Nebraska, and was sent to a juvenile detention facility. And then after graduating, he moved down to, after graduating high school, I guess, and after getting out of the facility, he then moved down to Florida and found a job as a cemetery worker. Now, by 1982, so he's 42 at this point, Little had already been arrested over 25 times in 11 different states for things like theft, assault, fraud, and attempted rape. And that year in 1982, he was arrested in Pascagoula, Mississippi for the murder of 22-year-old prostitute Melinda Lepre. However, a grand jury declined to indict him for some reason. I don't know. But here's the thing. It doesn't matter. You bring in a guy who is charged with murder, and then you look at his criminal record, which comes from 11 other states, and is 25 different charges. You gotta put him away. He's clearly a terrible person. And instead, Little, like while this investigation was going on into this murder, which they didn't end up charging him on, Little was then extradited to Florida for the murder of 26-year-old Patricia Mount after witnesses said she had spent time with Little on the night of her disappearance. However, just like with Melinda Lepre's murder, Little was let go, but this time because of unreliable witness testimony, which should not matter when your, rap sheet is as long as it is, but whatever. Little then quickly moved out to San Diego, where he was arrested for attacking 2 more prostitutes. This time, though, he was convicted and sent to prison for a little over 2 years. After his release in 1987, Little moved to Los Angeles and started killing prostitutes, which wasn't much of a concern for the LAPD because that's just like how the 70s and 80s were going. Little was not arrested again until September 5th, 2012, when he was living at a homeless shelter in Louisville, Kentucky, and only after DNA evidence linked him to 3 murders back in Los Angeles in 1987 and 1989. While on trial in Los Angeles, Little was DNA tested for nearly 100 unsolved murders across several states. And that's probably pretty standard, right? Like they're going to get a DNA sample and then they're just going to kind of throw it into a database to see if, you are connected to any cold cases just to make everyone's job a little easier. Samuel Little was eventually convicted of those 3 murders in Los Angeles and sentenced to life in prison. However, on November 9th, 2018, Little decided that he wanted to transfer out of his current prison to something a little nicer since he finally realized he was never going to get out. Authorities agreed to his request as long as he stopped professing his innocence to those 3 murders. And in response, Little agreed to stop professing his innocence, and then he just confessed to so much more murder. Like, so many more murders. He started by confessing to the murder of Melissa Thomas in 1996, which is weird because, he in 1987 was kind of like where he that was kind of the last that authorities ever saw of him, right? Because that's when he was released from prison in California. So from 1987 to 2012, when he's in Louisville, Kentucky, authorities have no idea what he's doing. Well, guess what he was doing, guys? He was killing everybody. He confessed to the murder of Melissa Thomas in 1996. He then confessed to the killing of Denise Brothers in Odessa, Texas in 1994 and was given another life sentence for that. A week later, he confessed to murdering 23-year-old Brenda Alexander in Phoenix City, Alabama back in 1979. The next day, he confessed to strangling a woman in 1977, as well as 18-year-old Fredonia Smith in Georgia in 1982. He then confessed to the 1982 murder of 55-year-old Dorothy Richards and the 1996 murder of 40-year-old Daisy McGuire in Houma, Louisiana. On November 19th of 2018, he confessed to killing 36-year-old Julia Critchfield in Gulfport, Mississippi. The next day, he admitted to killing 46-year-old Nancy Stevens in Tupelo, Mississippi. On November 21st, South Carolina officials got to Little and learned that he had killed 19-year-old Evelyn Watson near Columbia in 1978. He also confessed to killing 20-year-old Rosie Hill in Florida in 1982. And this dude's not even close to being done. All right? He also confessed to killing 34-year-old Martha Cunningham in Tennessee in 1975. He killed a random woman in Cleveland, Ohio, either in 1977 or 78. He strangled 23-year-old Linda Boards in Kentucky in 1981. He strangled Mary Jo Payton in Cleveland in 1984. Rose Evans in Cleveland in 1991. He killed one woman in Columbus, whose body he then dumped in Kentucky. He then committed 2 more murders in Florida, one of which had been incorrectly attributed to someone else. He killed 30-year-old Zena Jones in Memphis, another woman in Akron, and then 2 more women in Cincinnati. Now, why did police believe all of this? Well, he also drew portraits of 26 of his other victims that I haven't even named, which the FBI quickly released in hopes that someone would be able to recognize them because he didn't know who their names were, but he somehow remembered their faces. And I guess when you kill someone, you don't forget that. In all, Samuel Little confessed to 93 murders and was definitively linked to 60. He explained that most of his victims were prostitutes, drug addicts, or homeless women who would leave fewer clues to authorities in their disappearance and also wouldn't be cared about as much by the media as, say, like, I don't know, a pretty white woman. Media loves when a pretty white woman disappears or gets murdered. But, like, a ratty black sex worker or homeless lady or drug addict, like, no, they disappear all the time, especially from, like, major cities. Like, no one knows who they are anyway. They've probably cut off all contact with friends and family. And so Samuel Little's just going around strangling and murdering them all. And like, just, I don't know, cleaning up the streets. That's weird. That's sad to say. Little died on December 30th, 2020 in a Los Angeles hospital. Although no cause of death was officially listed, he was suffering from diabetes and heart problems at the time. I mean, it was 2020. Like, dude was 80 years old. So it was going to happen either way. With 60 confirmed victims, Little is already the most prolific serial killer in United States history. Killed more people than Ted Bundy, more people than like Gary Ridgway, Jeffrey Dahmer, like any of these more famous, Richard Ramirez, any of these more famous serial killers in the United States. Now, a couple people in Russia like Chikatilo and some of the others, like they killed more than 60. So like he's not the most prolific serial killer in the world, but in United States history, as we record, as I continue to record, authorities are still, working to see if they can match him to any other cases. Nothing has been definitively proven yet. He is still at 60 confirmed victims. So, and that's kind of, so like I mentioned this last week, like that's kind of why I said you've probably never heard this guy's name, because like, one, he's black. We don't really care about black people in this country. So like, oh, the most prolific serial killer is black. Oh, it's another thing that, white people have lost to the black people. We lost athleticism for sure. Can't like NBA, NFL, like no way, dude. Also can't be the best serial killers now because we got Samuel Little out here killing 60 people. And so like there's that element of it. There's also kind of the element of, his victims were not high profile. Like Ted Bundy got a ton of media press because he was killing white college girls. And that, America's not going to stand for that. Jeffrey Dahmer was eating people. So like, that's pretty cool. So like, his murders, especially because they were like homeless people, drug addicts, like a lot of people just had no idea. Because those kind of people just disappear all the time. You probably just, think that they died of an overdose or something. And so like people just moved on really quick. And then also like the third part of it is like, he's moving all over the country all the time. Like his entire life, he just bouncing around from city to city. Cause like he himself was basically homeless. And so he's just hopping trains and hitchhiking from, California to South Carolina. Just that belt right there, basically like Interstate 40, between Interstate 10 and Interstate 40, right? And so just doing all of that. And so it was real easy for someone like him to just keep killing people when no one's paying attention to the kinds of people that he killed. Anyway, moving on to our final story of Peter Lundin, who was born on February 15th, 1972 on the Danish island of Zealand, not New Zealand, but the OG Zealand. His father, Ole, had immigrated from Denmark to Canada to the United States to join the army to fight in West Germany, and then move back to Denmark. I don't know, he moved all over. Basically, in the end, he worked as a bricklayer before suffering a blood clot that then put him out of work. The lack of income brought the foreclosure of their home, forcing them to immigrate back to the United States, where Lundin's family ran a hotel in Ormond Beach, Florida. In 1984, the family moved from Ormond Beach to Maggie Valley, North Carolina, up in the mountains near Cherokee. However, the family's financial struggles continued to make things tense, and Peter and his father soon left his mother, Anna, and moved out to Los Angeles. There is a kitty behind me getting into something. Kitty, what are you doing? Can you not? What are you doing? What do you got in your mouth? What are you doing? Can you stop? Oh my God. Anyway, pointless interruption. So They leave their family in North Carolina, try to go out to Los Angeles to get some money. That didn't work, so then they go to New York, and then Boston, and then Miami, and none of these really work. While in high school, Peter worked as a bricklayer with his father and got super familiar with marijuana and cocaine because Miami. Ole and Anna eventually reconciled, and the family reunited back in Maggie Valley. Peter quickly became the new cool kid in school because Peter's the new kid from Miami, and he's brought drugs. And so he dealt those drugs to his classmates. On April 1st, 1991, when Peter was 19, his mom decided that he needed a haircut. Peter did not want a haircut, and he choked her to death. All right. But rather than go to police, Ole helped his son take his mother's body to the other side of the state to bury her on the beach near Cape Hatteras. Weird, but okay. Her body was found 7 months later, probably because the beach eroded away. But by then, Peter and Ole had already fled the country into Canada. Police eventually tracked them down to a Toronto hotel on June 6, 1992. Peter was extradited back to the States and given a 20-year prison sentence with a deportation order upon completion. And that's the end of the story. No, of course not. Thanks to a bunch of soldiers from Fort Bragg who couldn't stop beating and murdering their wives, the North Carolina prison system was overcrowded. And that's not even really a joke. At the time, there were so many soldiers from Fort Bragg who were filling up the jails that in the area that like they were overcrowded. And so they had to release a lot of people. Now, why did they have to release Peter Lundin? Well, he's got a deportation order, so we can probably just go ahead and get rid of him and ship him out. Not our problem anymore. And so they did. Peter was released after only serving 6 years and was sent back to Denmark with his new wife that he had married while in prison, which, ladies. Anyway, on a few months later, back in Denmark, Peter was kicked out of his apartment after he attacked his new wife and her teenage daughter. He then moved into a home in Norebro, a neighborhood in Copenhagen, and began visiting a brothel, because I guess that's what you do there. I don't know. He quickly met Marianne Peterson, a widow and sex worker, and the two quickly became lovers. On July 3rd, 2000, Marianne and two of her sons were reported missing. Her stepson, who filed the report, had gone to her house only to find a note taped to the front door saying that she was on vacation. However, the note was strangely worded and prompted the stepson to go investigate inside. Bad idea. Because when he got inside, he found the furniture in places that furniture like wasn't normally supposed to be. Like, I don't know, he probably like saw like the couch in the kitchen or, a rocking chair in the bathroom or something. It's weird stuff, right? There was vomit in the toilets and there was a strange smell emanating from the basement. Guess what that smell was, you guys? It was dead bodies. Police quickly came in and found bloodstains all over the house. Peter was arrested 2 days later and was completely cooperative with police because he was going to claim that he had walked into his house to see Marianne's boys murdered with Marianne lying unconscious on the floor. And filled with rage, thinking that she had been the one to kill her own children, he then beat her unconscious body to death. It seems weird. And police smartly just asked, well, why? Because, Denmark. Why didn't you just call police instead? And Peter explained that they probably wouldn't have believed him and believed his story thanks to his prior murder conviction. So he just decided to cut everyone's body up to get rid of all of the evidence, which, I don't know. If he was telling the truth, I can understand that logic, but you can't chance it because, they're going to still think you did it either way. But you probably have a better chance of getting away if you had just gone that route to begin with. He didn't. All of it's a lie. I hope you realize that, right? He killed them all. And so he was going to try to be like, well, no, and then tried to I thought she did it. So I got mad at her and killed her too because she killed our whole family. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Police clearly thought that was a terrible excuse, and Peter eventually just confessed to the entire triple murder on August 10th, 2000. In reality, here's what really happened. Peter had gotten really angry with Marianne because she, quote unquote, spoke sweetly to another man on the phone. Eventually, Marianne's two boys entered the room and a full-blown handicap street fight broke out on the couple's twin bed. I'm talking, it's like 3-on-1. And yet somehow Peter Lundin broke everyone's neck with his bare hands, which honestly may say more about how bad the other three people were at fighting than how good Peter was at murdering. I mean, but granted, Peter's already spent like 6 years in prison. He's probably learned some stuff. But to teenage boys, man, like, it's not like they're weak. Like, two teenage boys and a woman should be able to overpower one dude. Should. Even a dude who served time in prison and probably knows how to murder people. Definitely knows how to murder people because he killed his mom. He choked his mom out. He's really good at choking people to death, you guys. And so, but somehow breaks everybody's neck. Just judo chopping them and gets them all three of them. After they were dead, Peter then went out and bought an axe and several cleaning supplies. He dismembered the bodies and tossed them in a dumpster that was then transported to an incinerator. He made an attempt to clean the house, but clearly didn't do a great job because there were still bloodstains everywhere. Peter was given a life sentence this time and was sent straight to it's a crazy prison name, where he was attacked immediately by several inmates, including one who broke his nose with an iron tube. In 2002, he was attacked again after an inmate bonked a frying pan over his head. How are inmates getting frying pans? All right. Not only was he then transferred to the state prison of East Jutland, he was given 510 Danish krones, which is like $81, as compensation for the damages. In 2008, Peter married Marianne Poulsen. Why? I don't know, but thankfully they divorced 11 days later, but not because she found out that he had married someone with her same name, because remember, the other woman that he married while in prison was named Marianne Peterson. So he then marries another Marianne, which is weird, but divorced him 11 days later. And again, not because he was also in prison for life, but because Peter had lied to her about another woman that he was seeing at the same time. Oh, you mean a guy who's in prison for life lied to you and you're surprised by that? You believed him when he said he loved you and wanted to spend the rest of his life in prison with you? Oh, you're an idiot. Anyway, even more, Peter married again in 2011 to some stupid woman named Bettina. They stayed together until 2017. Along the way, he has been accused and convicted of like smuggling drugs into prison. He's filed some lawsuits against people and journalists for talking mad junk about him, even though it was basically true. He changed his name to something. I don't remember. He changed his name to Niels Schaffner for some reason, but then changed it again to Bjorn Skonborg. Okay. He is currently still imprisoned at the institution of Herstedverster. And that's it. We're done. All done. Serial killer sampler number 10 in the books. Let us quickly recap and see what we learned today.
What did we learn?
Number 1, John Christie. Listen, like maybe getting mustard gassed in World War I scrambled his brain, but his brain was pretty scrambled before all of that. And then to murder an entire family and then have it pinned on the remaining member of that family because he got the police to believe him because he was a former police officer. Anyway, classic police work. Number 2, Peter Lundin. Ladies, stop marrying dudes in prison. All right? Like, you can't be that lonely that you believe a dude in prison is your best option. Not even just your only option, your best option. Because ladies, here's the thing. I don't know if you know this about dudes. A guy in prison, especially a guy convicted of murder, serving a life sentence in prison, is not going to be your only option ever. All right? You can go out literally anywhere and you can find a dude to love you. Now, you may have to look past a few things, but the things you have to look past aren't going to be worse than murder. So I don't know. Ladies, figure it out. Stop doing it. I can change him. No, you can't. Clearly not. Stop it. Just stop it. Anyway, number 3, Samuel Little, the most prolific serial killer in United States history. Most people have never heard of him. Why? Because he's black and because he didn't kill pretty white women. He just killed a bunch of other black people who were homeless and drug addicts, and we just don't seem to care about those things because America.
What did we learn? Next week on Our Weird World is a story of what could have been. It is the story of Israel Keys. He still killed a lot of people. Don't worry. You're going to get your dose of murder next week. But oh boy, he could have been so much worse. He could have been bigger than Samuel Little. But didn't quite work out. But we're going to show you. We're going to talk about how that all happened next week. One story of Israel Keys. So come on back for that. And thank you for continuing to listen. Keep telling all your friends about the show and keep it weird.
This is a podcast.